Welcome to a bone-chilling night where history whispers to lull you to sleep, even as the medieval chill makes you shiver. Imagine yourself, once a nobleman clad in velvet, now banished to a mud-stained hut where the wind blows through the cracks like a mocking ghost. In Boring History for Sleep, we explore how medieval minds battled the darkest winter and how the Han dynasty created light from chaos, all to soothe your restless soul. Dim the lights and sink into your blanket, if you're lucky enough to have one. Like this video if you crave these sleepy tales, and leave a comment. Where are you watching and what time is it? As the frost bites your imaginary toes, know this. Your noble blood won't save you, but your stubborn heart might. Ready for a night of survival, irony, and unexpected hope? Let's get started. The wind howls outside your flimsy hovel, a mocking chorus that slips through walls so thin they might as well be made of whispers. You, once a noble who sipped wine from silver goblets, now crouch in a medieval peasant's nightmare, a mud and twig shack that laughs at the idea of warmth. The cold isn't just a sensation, it's a living beast, clawing at your bones, seeping into your very soul. Your wife, her face etched with quiet resolve, pulls your two children closer under a tattered sackcloth blanket, its musty stench a cruel reminder of the silks you once draped over your shoulders. The fire in the hearth, your only defense against this frozen hell, sputters like a dying man's breath, casting flickering shadows that dance across the dirt floor. You're not in a castle anymore, banished noble. You're in a medieval winter where survival is a grim game, and your mind is already starting to crack under the weight of it all. This is no cozy bedtime story, but a plunge into the brutal reality of medieval mental health, where the cold didn't just threaten your body, it gnawed at your spirit. The hearth, a pathetic pile of stones and half-burned peat, is your lifeline, but it's a fickle one. You learn quickly to bank the embers, burying them under ash like a desperate prayer to keep the glow alive until dawn. The peat is damp, the wood scarce, and every spark feels like a small miracle. You fumble in the dark, your fingers numb, your breath clouding the air like a ghost of your former self. The children whimper, their tiny bodies shivering against you, and you wonder if they sense the fear in your silence. Back in your noble days, you'd have called for servants to stoke the fire. Now you're the servant, the firekeeper, the fool who thought wealth could shield you from fate's cruel jest. The walls of your hovel are a mockery of shelter, woven from sticks and smeared with a gritty paste of mud, straw, and let's be honest, animal dung. There are fewer walls and more suggestions, letting the wind slither through every crack like an uninvited guest who knows all your secrets. You can hear an owl hooting outside, its eerie call slicing through the night as if it's gossiping about your downfall. The roof, a sagging mess of thatch, drips with the memory of yesterday's snow, and the floor is just compacted dirt, cold as a gravedigger's promise. You try to stuff rags into the gaps, but it's like trying to hold water in a sieve. The cold is relentless, a three-dimensional assault that attacks from above, below, and within. You're not just cold, you're a prisoner in a cell of frost, and your mind is starting to feel the bars closing in. In the Middle Ages, they didn't have words like depression or anxiety, but they knew the weight of what they called melancholy, a shadow that clung to the soul like damp rot. You feel it now, that heavy fog settling over your thoughts as you stare into the darkness. The silence is suffocating, broken only by the wind's cruel laughter and the faint crackle of the fire. You think of your old life, banquets lit by chandeliers, laughter echoing through stone halls, the warmth of a feather bed. Now your bed is a pile of straw, prickly and damp, crawling with fleas that treat you like their personal tavern. The contrast is a knife in your gut, twisting with every memory. You wonder what you did to deserve this, whether some divine judge is punishing you for sins you can't recall. The medieval mind often turned to God for answers, but tonight, God feels as distant as the summer sun. Your wife shifts beside you, her breath steady despite the cold, and you marvel at her strength. She's the anchor in this storm, the one who keeps the children from crying too loudly, who rationed the last of the barley to make tonight's watery gruel. You're not alone in this hovel, but loneliness creeps in anyway, a silent thief stealing your hope. The children, too young to understand your fall from grace, cling to you, their tiny hands like ice against your skin. You want to comfort them, to promise better days, but the words stick in your throat. What can you say when the wind is singing a lullaby of despair? At this moment, you're not just fighting the cold, you're fighting the darkness in your mind, the kind that whispers you'll never see spring again. Here's the shocking truth. In medieval times, waking up alive each morning was a victory, a middle finger to the reaper who stalked every winter night. Frostbite, hypothermia, and starvation weren't just risks, they were neighbors knocking at your door with icy fingers. The elderly and the young, like your children, were especially vulnerable, their fragile bodies no match for a season that showed no mercy. You learn to check their fingers and toes each dawn, praying they're not blackened by frost. The fear is a constant companion, a weight that presses on your chest even as you try to sleep. Yet there's a strange clarity in this fear, a sharpening of your senses. You notice the way the firelight plays on your wife's face, the way your son's breath hitches when he dreams. These small details become your lifeline, tethering you to the present when your mind wants to spiral into despair. The medieval peasants didn't have therapists or self-help books, but they had their ways of coping. They prayed, their whispered pleas to saints rising like smoke to a heaven they hoped was listening. They told stories, weaving tales of heroes and harvests to drown out the wind's taunts. You try it now, murmuring a half-remembered prayer to Saint Bridget, the patron of hearths, begging her to keep your fire alive. It feels foolish, but there's comfort in the rhythm of the words, a tether to something bigger than your freezing hovel. You think of modern life, where stress might come from a missed deadline or a drained phone battery. Here, stress is survival, and every choice, whether to burn the last stick of wood or save it for tomorrow, feels like a gamble with your family's lives. Yet there's a lesson in this. The human spirit, even in its darkest moments, clings to hope like a drowning man to driftwood. Your hovel, for all its misery, is a classroom in resilience. You learn to bank the fire with care, piling ash over embers to coax them through the night. You learn to ignore the fleas, to breathe shallowly through your nose to warm the air before it hits your lungs. You learn to listen to the wind, not as an enemy, but as a teacher, telling you where the walls need more mud or rags. These are the skills of survival, honed by centuries of peasants who refuse to let winter win. You're no different from them now, your noble blood just a memory, your hands as calloused as any farmer's. The melancholy still lingers, a guest you can't evict, but you're starting to fight back, not with swords or gold, but with stubbornness, with the quiet defiance of choosing to live another day. Compare this to today, where we bundle up in heated homes, grumbling about a chilly commute or a broken heater. The medieval peasant would laugh, or maybe cry, at our complaints. Their world was a crucible, forging strength from suffering, teaching them to find joy in a single warm meal or a night without frostbite. You feel a flicker of that now, a grudging respect for the body's ability to endure, for the mind's refusal to break. Your wife hums softly, a tune from her childhood, and the sound is a lifeline, pulling you back from the edge of despair. The children stir their warmth as a reminder that you're not alone. This hovel, this freezing, flea-ridden prison, is also a home because it holds the people you love. The medieval mind, battered by cold and hunger, found ways to endure that we've forgotten in our cozy modern lives. They leaned on faith, on community, on the simple act of surviving one more night. You're learning that now, as the fire crackles and the wind howls. The melancholy is real, a weight you carry like a stone, but so is your resolve. You're not just a banished noble, you're a survivor, a student of winter's harsh lessons. As the night deepens, you close your eyes, not expecting sleep, but hoping for it. The cold is still there, the darkness still heavy, but you're starting to believe you can outlast them both. And that belief, fragile as a single ember, is enough to carry you toward dawn. The wind howls outside your flimsy hovel, a mocking chorus that slips through walls so thin they might as well be made of whispers. You, once a noble who sipped wine from silver goblets, now crouch in a medieval peasant's nightmare, a mud and twig shack that laughs at the idea of warmth. The cold isn't just a sensation, it's a living beast, clawing at your bones, seeping into your very soul. Your wife, her face etched with quiet resolve, pulls your two children closer under a tattered sackcloth blanket, its musty stench a cruel reminder of the silks you once draped over your shoulders. The fire in the hearth, your only defense against this frozen hell, sputters like a dying man's breath, casting flickering shadows that dance across the dirt floor. You're not in a castle anymore, banished noble. You're in a medieval winter where survival is a grim game, and your mind is already starting to crack under the weight of it all. This is no cozy bedtime story, but a plunge into the brutal reality of medieval mental health, where the cold didn't just threaten your body, it gnawed at your spirit. The hearth, a pathetic pile of stones and half-burned peat, is your lifeline, but it's a fickle one. You learn quickly to bank the embers, burying them under ash like a desperate prayer to keep the glow alive until dawn. The peat is damp, the wood scarce, and every spark feels like a small miracle. You fumble in the dark, your fingers numb, your breath clouding the air like a ghost of your former self. The children whimper, their tiny bodies shivering against you, and you wonder if they sense the fear in your silence. Back in your noble days, you'd have called for servants to stoke the fire. Now you're the servant, the firekeeper, the fool who thought wealth could shield you from fate's cruel jest. The walls of your hovel are a mockery of shelter, woven from sticks and smeared with a gritty paste of mud, straw, and, let's be honest, animal dung. There are fewer walls and more suggestions, letting the wind slither through every crack like an uninvited guest who knows all your secrets. You can hear an owl hooting outside, its eerie call slicing through the night as if it's gossiping about your downfall. The roof, a sagging mess of thatch, drips with the memory of yesterday's snow, and the floor is just compacted dirt, cold as a gravedigger's promise. You try to stuff rags into the gaps, but it's like trying to hold water in a sieve. The cold is relentless, a three-dimensional assault that attacks from above, below, and within. You're not just cold, you're a prisoner in a cell of frost, and your mind is starting to feel the bars closing in. In the Middle Ages, they didn't have words like depression or anxiety, but they knew the weight of what they called melancholy, a shadow that clung to the soul like damp rot. You feel it now, that heavy fog settling over your thoughts as you stare into the darkness. The silence is suffocating, broken only by the wind's cruel laughter and the faint crackle of the fire. You think of your old life, banquets lit by chandeliers, laughter echoing through stone halls, the warmth of a feather bed. Now, your bed is a pile of straw, prickly and damp, crawling with fleas that treat you like their personal tavern. The contrast is a knife in your gut, twisting with every memory. You wonder what you did to deserve this, whether some divine judge is punishing you for sins you can't recall. The medieval mind often turned to God for answers, but tonight, God feels as distant as the summer sun. Your wife shifts beside you, her breath steady despite the cold, and you marvel at her strength. She's the anchor in this storm, the one who keeps the children from crying too loudly, who rationed the last of the barley to make tonight's watery gruel. You're not alone in this hovel, but loneliness creeps in any way, a silent thief stealing your hope. The children, too young to understand your fall from grace, cling to you, their tiny hands like ice against your skin. You want to comfort them, to promise better days, but the words stick in your throat. What can you say when the wind is singing a lullaby of despair? At this moment, you're not just fighting the cold, you're fighting the darkness in your mind, the kind that whispers you'll never see spring again. Here's the shocking truth. In medieval times, waking up alive each morning was a victory, a middle finger to the reaper who stalked every winter night. Frostbite, hypothermia, and starvation weren't just risks, they were neighbors, knocking at your door with icy fingers. The elderly and the young, like your children, were especially vulnerable, their fragile bodies no match for a season that showed no mercy. You learn to check their fingers and toes each dawn, praying they're not blackened by frost. The fear is a constant companion, a weight that presses on your chest even as you treat to sleep. Yet there's a strange clarity in this fear, a sharpening of your senses. You notice the way the firelight plays on your wife's face, the way your son's breath hitches when he dreams. These small details become your lifeline, tethering you to the present when your mind wants to spiral into despair. The medieval peasants didn't have therapists or self-help books, but they had their ways of coping. They prayed, their whispered pleas to saints, rising like smoke to a heaven they hoped was listening. They told stories, weaving tales of heroes and harvests to drown out the wind's taunts. You try it now, murmuring a half-remembered prayer to Saint Bridget, the patron of hearths, begging her to keep your fire alive. It feels foolish, but there's comfort in the rhythm of the words, a tether to something bigger than your freezing hovel. You think of modern life, where stress might come from a missed deadline or a drained phone battery. Here, Stress is survival, and every choice, whether to burn the last stick of wood or save it for tomorrow, feels like a gamble with your family's lives. Yet there's a lesson in this. The human spirit, even in its darkest moments, clings to hope like a drowning man to driftwood. Your hovel, for all its misery, is a classroom in resilience. You learn to bank the fire with care, piling ash over embers to coax them through the night. You learn to ignore the fleas, to breathe shallowly through your nose to warm the air before it hits your lungs. You learn to listen to the wind, not as an enemy, but as a teacher, telling you where the walls need more mud or rags. These are the skills of survival, honed by centuries of peasants who refused to let winter win. You're no different from them now, your noble blood just a memory, your hands as calloused as any farmer's. The melancholy still lingers, a guest you can't evict, but you're starting to fight back, not with swords or gold, but with stubbornness, with the quiet defiance of choosing to live another day. Compare this to today, where we bundle up in heated homes, grumbling about a chilly commute or a broken heater. The medieval peasant would laugh, or maybe cry, at our complaints. Their world was a crucible, forging strength from suffering, teaching them to find joy in a single warm meal or a night without frostbite. You feel a flicker of that now, a grudging respect for the body's ability to endure, for the mind's refusal to break. Your wife hums softly, a tune from her childhood, and the sound is a lifeline, pulling you back from the edge of despair. The children stir their warmth as a reminder that you're not alone. This hovel, this freezing, flea-ridden prison, is also a home because it holds the people you love. The medieval mind, battered by cold and hunger, found ways to endure that we've forgotten in our cozy modern lives. They leaned on faith, on community, on the simple act of surviving one more night. You're learning that now as the fire crackles and the wind howls. The melancholy is real, a weight you carry like a stone, but so is your resolve. You're not just a banished noble, you're a survivor, a student of winter's harsh lessons. As the night deepens, you close your eyes, not expecting sleep, but hoping for it. The cold is still there, the darkness still heavy, but you're starting to believe you can outlast them both. And that belief, fragile as a single ember, is enough to carry you toward dawn. The wind hasn't given up its assault on your hovel, whistling through the cracks like a bard who's forgotten the tune, but not the enthusiasm. You, once a noble, who turned heads in velvet finery, now sit hunched in a medieval peasant's reality, wrapped in a patchwork of sackcloth and sheepskin that smells like a barnyard's revenge. The floor beneath you, a crunchy carpet of straw, is less a comfort and more a breeding ground for fleas who've decided you're their new favorite landlord. Poverty, it turns out, comes with its twisted gifts: walls smeared with dung for insulation, clothes layered with grime for warmth, and a mindset that teeters between despair and dark, stubborn humor. As the cold bites deeper, you're learning that medieval survival wasn't just about enduring the frost. It was about wrestling with a mind that could break under the weight of want. Welcome to a world where filth is your armor and a laugh is your shield. Your hovel is a testament to medieval ingenuity, or perhaps desperation dressed up as creativity. The walls, a flimsy weave of sticks and mud, are patched with whatever you could scavenge: moss, rags, even clumps of sheep wool that smell suspiciously like your old cloak's better days. You'd once scoffed at peasants for their crude homes, but now you're the one smearing dung onto cracks, muttering curses as the cold laughs at your efforts. The roof sags under the weight of snow, dripping icy water that turns your dirt floor into a muddy swamp. You stuff more straw into the gaps, but it's like trying to plug a sinking ship with a twig. The shocking truth hits you like a slap. In medieval times, filth wasn't just a byproduct of poverty, it was a survival strategy, a gritty shield against winter's relentless siege. Your clothes are a masterpiece of necessity, a far cry from the embroidered tunics you once wore. Now, you're draped in layers of rough wool, patched sackcloth, and a tattered sheepskin that's more holes than hide. The grime on your skin, once an affront to your noble sensibilities, has become your secret weapon. That layer of grease and dirt, built up over weeks without a bath, clogs the fabric's weave, making it wind-resistant, a medieval Gore-Tex, if you will, just with a bouquet of sweat and smoke. You almost laugh at the absurdity, remembering how you once bathed in rosewater, surrounded by servants. Now your perfume is the pungent tang of hearth smoke and cow dung, a scent that announces your survival to anyone within sniffing distance. The medieval peasant knew this trick. Dirt wasn't failure, it was function, a badge of endurance worn proudly, if not fragrantly. The straw beneath you is no feather bed, but it's your only buffer against the frozen earth. It's a lumpy, poky mess, alive with fleas that treat your body like a buffet. You shift, trying to find a spot that doesn't jab your ribs, but every movement stirs up a chorus of crunches, like nature's worst mattress commercial. The fleas are relentless. Their bites are a constant reminder that poverty spares no one, noble or not. You'd once pitied peasants for their itchy, straw-stuffed lives, but now you're one of them, scratching and cursing in the dark. Yet there's a strange pride in this, a realization that you're adapting, learning to live with the uninvited guests that come with your new station. The medieval mind didn't wallow in self-pity. It found humor in the absurdity, a dark chuckle at the idea that fleas might be the least of your worries. Your wife, ever the pragmatist, has become a master of this grim art. She patches your clothes with scraps, her fingers deft despite the cold, turning a torn sack into a makeshift cloak. She jokes that you're a walking tapestry, each stain a story of survival. You catch yourself smiling, a rare flicker of warmth in this frozen world. The children, too, are learning, their small hands helping to stuff rags into wall gaps or collect stray bits of straw. Your son, barely 7, proudly shows you a piece of bark he found, claiming it'll burn longer than the peat. You nod, hiding your fear that it won't be enough. The medieval peasant's life was a constant improvisation, turning scraps into solutions and misery into moments of defiance. You're starting to see the genius in their grit, the way they made do with nothing but sheer will. The cold doesn't just chill your body, it tests your mind, pushing you to the edge of despair. The medieval term melancholy feels all too real now, a heavy cloak of doubt that settles over you as the night drags on. You think of your old life, banquets where laughter echoed, halls warmed by roaring fires, beds soft with down. Now your bed is a straw pile, your hall a leaking hovel, and laughter feels like a luxury you can't afford. The wind's howl is a constant reminder of your fall, each gust whispering that you're not enough, that you'll never keep your family warm. Yet you're learning to fight back, not with swords or gold, but with the same stubborn humor the peasants used. You mutter to the wind, "If you're going to mock me, at least bring some firewood." It's a weak jest, but it's yours, a spark of defiance in the dark. Compare this to today, where we complain about a drafty apartment or a thermostat set too low. The medieval peasant would roll their eyes at our whining, their lives a masterclass in making do with less. You think of modern stress, deadlines, bills, the ping of a new email, and it feels trivial next to this. Here, every day is a gamble, every night a test. Yet there's a strange beauty in this struggle, a clarity that comes from having nothing left to lose. You look at your wife, her face lit by the fire's faint glow, and see a strength you never noticed in the castle's candlelight. Your children, despite their shivers, sleep with a trust that pierces your heart. The peasants knew this secret. Poverty strips you bare, but it reveals what matters: family, resilience, the will to see another dawn. The gifts of poverty are bitter, but they're teaching you something profound. The grime on your skin, the fleas in your straw, the stench of your makeshift cloak, they're not just burdens, they're tools, forged in the crucible of necessity. The medieval peasants didn't have the luxury of despair. They had to find meaning in the muck. You're starting to understand that as you layer another rag over your shoulders, feeling the weight of survival settle into your bones. The cold is still your enemy, but you're learning its tricks, finding ways to outsmart it, if only for one more night. You laugh, a dry, quiet sound, at the thought of your noble self, now a filthy, flea-bitten survivor. It's not the laugh of defeat, but of defiance, a nod to the peasants who turned poverty into a strange kind of triumph. The fire crackles, a feeble protest against the cold, and you tend it with care, banking the embers like a priest guarding a sacred relic. Your wife shifts closer, her warmth a reminder that you're not alone in this fight. The children dream, their breaths soft clouds in the frigid air, and you wonder what they see behind their closed eyes. Maybe it's the castle you lost, or maybe it's something simpler, a warm meal, a sunny day. The medieval mind, battered by want, found ways to endure through these small hopes, these fleeting moments of connection. You're learning that now, as the wind howls and the fleas bite. Poverty has stripped you of everything but the essentials: love, grit, and a stubborn refusal to give up. You close your eyes, not expecting sleep, but daring to believe that tomorrow might be just a little less cruel. The night is a thief, stealing warmth from your bones as you huddle in your medieval hovel, a crumbling fortress of mud and straw that mocks your noble past. You, once a lord who dined on roasted pheasant, now stare at a pot of watery gruel, its gray surface bubbling like a witch's brew gone wrong. The cold claws at you, but hunger is the real enemy, gnawing at your stomach with a ferocity that makes the wind's howls seem polite. Your wife stirs the pot, her hands cracked from frost, while your children watch with wide, hopeful eyes, as if this sludge might somehow taste like the feasts of your lost castle. In this frozen corner of the Middle Ages, food isn't just sustenance, it's a lifeline, a flickering ember of hope against the darkness of winter. Welcome to a world where a moldy crust is a treasure, and survival hinges on tricks as clever as they are desperate. The gruel is your dinner, a sad soup of barley scraps and wilted roots that smells more of despair than nourishment. You scoop it from a wooden bowl, its warmth a fleeting gift against the chill that seeps through your tattered sackcloth. The pot sits in a hay box, A crude medieval slow cooker, nothing more than a wooden crate stuffed with straw to trap heat. It's a peasant's genius, keeping your meager meal warm without wasting precious firewood. You marvel at the ingenuity, born of necessity, as you spoon the gruel into your mouth, its gritty texture a reminder that you're still alive. Your wife, ever the alchemist of survival, has learned to stretch every grain, tossing in wild nettles or a shriveled turnip scavenged from the frozen fields. You'd once turned up your nose at such fare. Now, you eat with a gratitude that feels almost holy. Hunger sharpens your senses, but it also frays your nerves. The children whine, their small voices piercing the quiet, and you snap at them before catching yourself. The medieval peasant knew this dance well. Hunger didn't just weaken the body, it tested the mind, turning patience into a luxury you can't afford. You feel it now, the irritability that creeps in like frost through a crack, making every small annoyance, a spilled bowl, a child's cry, feel like a personal betrayal. Yet there's a lesson in this, one the peasants learned long ago. A full stomach, however meager the meal, is a shield against the melancholy that haunts these long nights. You force yourself to chew slowly, savoring the warmth, letting it anchor you against the storm of your thoughts. The shocking truth lands like a stone in your gut. In medieval times, a single meal could mean the difference between life and death. Starvation wasn't a distant threat. It was a guest at every table, waiting for a weak harvest or a brutal winter to claim its due. Your children, their faces pale and pinched, are proof of this. You watch them eat, their small hands clutching spoons like lifelines, and you're struck by a fierce need to protect them. The peasants didn't have grocery stores or food delivery. They had fields that froze, crops that failed, and neighbors who shared what little they had. You're learning that now, as your wife trades a handful of dried herbs for a neighbor's half-rotten parsnip. It's not charity, it's survival, a quiet pact that binds your village against the cold. Your wife has become a master of foraging, her eyes sharp for anything edible in the barren landscape. She returns from the woods with a bundle of roots, their bitter taste a small price to pay for another day. Your son, barely 7, mimics her, proudly presenting a shriveled wild carrot he dug from the snow. You ruffle his hair, hiding the lump in your throat, and realize he's learning the same resilience that kept peasants alive for centuries. You try a trick you've heard whispered among the villagers, tucking a hot stone, warmed in the hearth's embers, into your sleeve to keep your hands from freezing. It works, mostly, until you forget and burn your arm, earning a laugh from your wife. The pain is worth it for that sound, a rare note of joy in this grim symphony of survival. The haybox isn't the only peasant innovation you're adopting. You've learned to wrap scraps of bread in cloth, tucking them close to your body to keep them from freezing solid. It's a small victory, but in this world, every bite is a triumph. You think of modern kitchens, stocked with endless choices, and almost laugh at the contrast. A medieval peasant would stare at a supermarket in disbelief, their entire year's harvest dwarfed by a single aisle. Yet there's a strange clarity in this scarcity, a focus that cuts through the noise of modern life. You're not just eating to live, you're eating to fight, to keep the fire in your heart burning as fiercely as the one in your heart. The gruel may taste like defeat, but each swallow is a rebellion against winter's grip. Your children are learning too, their small hands busy with tasks that belie their age. Your daughter, barely 5, helps her mother sort through a pile of withered greens, her tiny fingers nimble despite the cold. You see the pride in her eyes, the same pride you feel when you manage to keep the fire alive through the night. The medieval peasant's life was a school of hard knocks, teaching resilience through necessity. You're enrolled now, a student of survival, learning to find joy in the smallest victories, a root that isn't rotten, a fire that doesn't die, a child's smile in the dark. These moments are fleeting, but they're enough to keep the melancholy at bay, to remind you that you're not just surviving, you're fighting for something bigger. The cold is still your enemy, but hunger is a teacher, showing you how to stretch every resource, to cherish every crumb. You think of the feasts you once hosted, tables groaning under the weight of meat and wine, and it feels like a dream from another life. Now a single crust of moldy bread is a banquet, and you eat it with a reverence you never knew as a noble. Your wife catches your eye, her face softened by the fire's glow, and you share a quiet moment of understanding. The peasants knew this secret. Scarcity sharpens love, strips away the superfluous, and leaves only what matters. You pull your children closer, their warmth a reminder that you're not alone in this fight. The hunger gnaws, but so does hope, a stubborn spark that refuses to die. Compare this to today, where we toss out leftovers without a thought, grumbling when our coffee order is wrong. The medieval peasant would shake their head at our waste, their lives a testament to making do with less. You're learning that now as you savor the last spoonful of gruel, its warmth spreading through you like a promise. The cold is relentless, but so are you, fortified by a meal that's more than food. It's defiance, a declaration that you'll see another dawn. Your wife hums as she cleans the pot, a tune that carries the weight of centuries, and you realize that survival isn't just about the body. It's about the mind, the will to find meaning in a bowl of sludge, to laugh at a burnt arm, to believe in spring when winter feels eternal. The fire crackles, a frail ally in this frozen world, and you tend it with care, knowing it's all that stands between you and the reaper. The haybox sits nearby, a silent hero keeping your next meal warm. You look at your family, their faces etched with hunger, but also with strength, and you feel a surge of pride. The medieval peasants didn't have much, but they had this: the ability to turn scarcity into survival, to find joy in the act of living. You're one of them now, a noble no longer, but a fighter, armed with tricks and tenacity. The night stretches on, cold and cruel, but you close your eyes, warmed by a meal and a spark of hope, daring to dream of a morning that might just be kinder. The night wraps your hovel in a shroud of frost, its icy fingers prying at the flimsy walls as if eager to claim you. You, once a noble who commanded halls of stone, now lie wedged between your wife and children, your bodies pressed together like a litter of shivering pups in a medieval peasant's desperate bid for warmth. The air reeks of damp straw, cow dung, and the faint tang of smoke from a hearth that's more hope than heat. A pig snores nearby, its bulk a grudging gift of warmth, while a chicken perches on a rafter, eyeing you like an uninvited guest. Loneliness, you're learning, is a colder killer than winter itself. In this frozen corner of the Middle Ages, survival isn't just about fire or food. It's about the human warmth that keeps despair at bay. Welcome to a world where community is your shield, and even a smelly pig might save your soul. Your hovel is a chaotic furnace of life, packed with bodies, human and animal, each contributing to a fragile cocoon of heat. The straw beneath you crackles with every shift, a prickly reminder of your fall from feather beds to flea-ridden floors. Your wife pulls the children closer, their small forms trembling under a threadbare blanket that smells like it's seen better centuries. The pig, your new roommate, huffs against the wall, its warmth seeping through the mud and sticks. You'd once ordered such creatures banished from your sight. Now you're grateful for its bulk, even if its snores sound like a drunken minstrel. A chicken clucks softly above, its feathers catching the fire's dim glow, and you almost laugh at the absurdity, a noble sharing a bed with livestock. But in this moment, you understand. In medieval winters, privacy was a myth, but connection was survival. The shocking truth hits like a gust through a crack. In the Middle Ages, solitude was a death sentence. The cold didn't just freeze your fingers, it isolated you, turning your mind into a battlefield where melancholy could win. The peasants knew this, huddling together not just for warmth, but to keep the darkness of the soul at bay. You feel it now, the weight of the night pressing down, the wind's howl a mocking chorus that whispers of your failures. Your children's breaths, soft and uneven, are a lifeline tethering you to the present. Your wife's hand finds yours, her grip steady despite the chill, and you realize she's not just keeping you warm, she's keeping you sane. The medieval world taught that no one survived alone. Community was the fire that burned brighter than any hearth. The hovel is crowded tonight, not just with your family, but with neighbors, drawn by the faint glow of your fire. A widow from down the hill, her face lined with grief, shares your straw, her body adding to the collective warmth. A farmer, his hands rough as the bark he burns, brings a bundle of twigs, a silent offering to the communal flame. Even the animals play their part, the pig's heat a grudging gift, the chicken's clucks a strange lullaby. You'd once valued space, your noble chambers vast and solitary. Now you see the wisdom in this cramped, smelly chaos. The peasants didn't have therapists or support groups, but they had each other, their shared breaths a rebellion against winter's cruelty. You're learning that now, as the widow hums a tune, her voice weaving through the dark like a thread of hope. Stories are the currency of this hovel, passed around the fire like precious coins. The farmer tells of a spring long ago when the fields bloomed despite a late frost, his voice rough but warm. Your wife counters with a tale of a cunning fox, her words soothing the children's fears. You try your own, stumbling through a story of a knight who outwitted a storm, your voice shaky but growing stronger. The act feels foolish, yet it's a lifeline, pulling you back from the edge of despair. The medieval peasant knew this trick. Stories weren't just entertainment, they were medicine, stitching together fractured minds. You think of modern loneliness, the way we hide behind screens, isolated despite our comforts. The peasants would scoff, their lives a testament to the power of connection, of shared laughter in the face of hardship. The fire crackles, a frail ally in this frozen world, and you tend it with care, knowing it's the heart of this makeshift community. The widow shifts closer, her warmth a quiet gift, and you feel a pang of gratitude for her presence. The children sleep now, their faces softened by dreams, and you wonder what they see, perhaps the castle you lost, or perhaps a simpler joy, like a warm loaf of bread. The pig snorts, and you stifle a laugh, imagining it as a grumpy landlord demanding rent. The medieval mind found humor in these moments, a dark chuckle that defied the cold. You're learning that too as you share a glance with your wife, her eyes sparkling with a resilience you never noticed in the castle's candlelight. The hovel is a mess, but it's alive, pulsing with the stubborn heat of human connection. Compare this to today, where we chase solitude in air-conditioned rooms, grumbling when someone sits too close on a bus. The medieval peasant would shake their head at our isolation, their lives a masterclass in leaning on others. You think of modern stress, endless notifications, the pressure to perform, and it feels trivial next to this. Here, every shared breath is a victory, every story a shield against the melancholy that lurks in the dark. The widow's humming, the farmer's twigs, the pig's warmth. They're not just survival tools, they're acts of defiance, proof that no winter is stronger than a community that refuses to break. You pull your family closer, their heat mingling with yours, and feel a flicker of something, hope perhaps, or at least the will to keep going. The hovel, for all its stench and chaos, is teaching you a truth the peasants knew by heart. Connection is the antidote to despair. You're no longer the noble who valued titles over touch. You're a survivor, bound to these people by shared struggle. The fire sputters, but it holds, its glow a promise that you'll see dawn. The chicken shifts above, dropping a feather that lands on your son's head, and you laugh, a quiet, genuine sound that surprises you. The medieval world was brutal, but it was also human, woven together by stories, warmth, and the refusal to let winter win. You close your eyes, the weight of the night still heavy, but the warmth of your family, your neighbors, even that damn pig, is enough to carry you toward morning. Dawn creeps into your hovel like a reluctant guest, its pale light seeping through cracks in the mud and stick walls, revealing a world still gripped by winter's cruel fist. You, once a noble who woke to the clink of silver and the scent of fresh bread, now stir with a groan, your back aching from a straw bed that's more punishment than comfort. The cold has sunk into your bones, turning every movement into a protest, and a chicken perched on your head clucks with the smugness of a landlord demanding rent. Your wife, her hands cracked and raw from battling the frost, is already up, stuffing rags into the walls to keep the wind at bay. Your children, their faces pale but defiant, huddle by the hearth, where your 7-year-old son fumbles with a flint, trying to coax life from last night's embers. In this medieval wasteland, waking up isn't a relief, it's a battle, a test of will against a season that wants you dead. Welcome to a morning where survival is your only crown, and every breath a quiet rebellion against the dark. The air is sharp, slicing through your tattered sackcloth like a blade, and the hovel feels less like a home and more like a battlefield. The straw beneath you crackles, its damp, moldy scent mingling with the acrid smoke from the hearth. You shift, wincing as a rogue stalk jabs your side, and notice the fleas have thrown a party on your skin overnight. Their bites a mocking reminder of your fall from grace. You'd once risen to the sound of servants bustling, their trays laden with fruit and wine. Now, you wake to the sight of your daughter, barely 5, shivering under a blanket that smells like a sheep's bad day. The cold isn't just outside, it's inside, creeping up from the dirt floor, wrapping around your heart. Yet there's a strange clarity in this misery, a sharpening of your senses that makes you notice the small things, the way your wife's breath clouds the air, the faint glow of the fire your son is fighting to revive. The shocking truth he hits like a bucket of icy water. In medieval times, surviving a single night was a triumph, a middle finger to a winter that claimed the weak without mercy. Frostbite wasn't a possibility, it was a neighbor lurking at the edges of your hovel, waiting for a moment of weakness. You check your children's fingers and toes, your heart pounding as you search for the telltale black of dead flesh. The elderly and the young, like your family, were winter's favorite targets, their fragile bodies no match for nights that turned breath to ice. You remember stories of entire households found frozen in spring, their arms still wrapped around each other, as if love could have been enough to keep them warm. The thought chills you more than the air, and you pull your children closer, their small warmth a fragile shield against the fear that gnaws at your mind. Your son, his small hands trembling, strikes the flint again, and a spark catches, a tiny miracle in this frozen hell. You watch, pride swelling despite the cold, as he blows gently on the embers, his face screwed up in concentration. He's no noble's heir anymore. He's a survivor, learning the peasant's art of firekeeping before he's learned to read. You'd once taught him the names of constellations, pointing at a velvet sky from a castle balcony. Now, you teach him to bank embers, to ration wood, to outsmart the colds. The medieval peasant's life was a school of necessity, and your son is its youngest student, his clumsy efforts a testament to the resilience that kept generations alive. You ruffle his hair, ignoring the chicken's indignant squawk as it hops off your head, and feel a flicker of hope, a dangerous thing in a world this harsh but impossible to suppress. Your wife is a warrior in this grim dawn, her hands moving with a quiet fury as she patches the walls with rags and mud. The wind sneers through the cracks, but she fights back, her fingers red and raw, her breath steady despite the exhaustion etched into her face. You'd once admired her grace in a ballroom, her laughter lighting up a hall. Now you marvel at her grit, the way she turns desperation into defiance. She catches your eye and offers a tired smile, a silent promise that you'll make it through another day. The peasants knew this secret. Survival wasn't just about strength, it was about stubbornness, the refusal to let winter win. You're learning that now, as you help her stuff a gap in the wall, your hands clumsy but determined, the cold biting but not breaking you. The hearth is your lifeline, a sputtering flame that's more symbol than savior. You tend it with care, banking the embers under ash, a ritual as sacred as any prayer you once offered in a cathedral. The fire is weak, but it's alive, and so are you. The medieval peasant didn't have thermostats or electric blankets. They had this, a fragile glow that meant the difference between life and death. You think of modern mornings, where we grumble about a cold shower or a late coffee run. The peasants would laugh, their lives a testament to endurance we can barely fathom. You're one of them now, your noble blood irrelevant, your hands as calloused as any farmer's. The chicken clucks again, and you mutter a curse, half smiling at the absurdity. If you can survive a night with a bird on your head, maybe you can survive anything. Melancholy, that medieval shadow, lingers in the corners of your mind, whispering doubts as the dawn light grows. You feel its weight, a heaviness that makes every task, stoking the fire, checking the children, patching the walls, feel like a mountain to climb. The peasants didn't have words for mental health, but they knew this darkness, calling it a demon that fed on cold and solitude. You fight it with small acts, a story told to your daughter, a shared glance with your wife, a spark coaxed from flint. You tell your children of a spring you once saw, fields green and warm, hoping the words will warm them too. The act feels futile, but it's a lifeline, a way to keep the mind from fracturing. The medieval world taught that survival was a team sport, and you're playing it now, your family's warmth a shield against despair. The hovel is a mess, straw, fleas, smoke, and the ever-present stench of livestock, but it's alive, pulsing with the stubborn heat of human will. Your neighbors, drawn by the fire's glow, share the space, their presence a quiet comfort. A farmer, his face weathered like old leather, offers a handful of twigs, his eyes meeting yours with a nod of understanding. A widow hums softly, her voice a thread of hope woven through the cold. The peasants knew that community was their greatest weapon, a fire brighter than any hearth. You think of modern isolation, the way we hide behind screens, chasing likes instead of warmth. The contrast is stark, a lesson in what we've lost. Here, every shared breath is a victory, every story a stitch in the fabric of survival. You're not alone, and that truth is warmer than any blanket. Your son's fire catches, a small triumph that lights up his face. You clap his shoulder, your heart swelling with a pride you never felt in castle halls. He's learning, as you are, that survival isn't about gold or titles. It's about grit, about refusing to let the cold win. Your wife finishes her work, the walls a little less porous, and sits beside you, her hand finding yours. The gesture is small, but it's enough to push back the melancholy, to remind you that you're fighting for something bigger than yourself. The medieval peasant's life was a crucible, forging resilience from suffering, and you're in it now, shaped by the same fire. You think of spring, a distant dream, but one you're starting to believe in. The cold is still there, the darkness still heavy, but you're stronger than you thought. The morning stretches on, gray and unforgiving, but you're alive, your family's warmth a testament to your defiance. The chicken hops down, eyeing you with what you swear is a smirk, and you laugh, a dry, quiet sound that feels like a victory. The medieval world was brutal, but it was human, built on the stubborn will to endure. You're part of that now, a noble no longer, but a survivor, armed with the same tools as those who came before: love, resilience, and a fire that refuses to die. You close your eyes, not expecting sleep, but daring to hope for a day that's just a little kinder, a spring that's closer than it seems. As the frigid hovels of medieval Europe fade into the night, a new world emerges, one where the chill of chaos gives way to the warmth of order. Picture the sprawling palaces of Chang'an, their tiled roofs gleaming under a distant sun, where the Han dynasty rose from the ashes of rebellion to forge a legacy that still echoes in modern China. This is no longer the tale of a shivering noble, but a story of an empire built on resilience, ambition, and the stubborn human will to create light from darkness. In this chapter of Boring History for Sleep, the narrative shifts to ancient China, where the Han dynasty's rise offers a soothing counterpoint to the medieval struggle, a tale of triumph that whispers hope to restless minds. The listener, weary from the day's stress, is invited to sink into this ancient world where survival wasn't just about enduring the cold, it was about building a civilization that would outlast the ages. The transition from Europe's icy hovels to the vibrant heart of the Han Dynasty is a journey across time and space, yet it carries the same thread of human endurance. In the Middle Ages, peasants battled winter with fire and grit. In ancient China, a nation battled chaos with vision and unity. The Han Dynasty, emerging around 202 BCE, was not born in comfort, but in the wreckage of the Qin Dynasty's tyranny. Its story is one of rebirth, of ordinary men like Liu Bang, a peasant turned emperor who wove order from a tapestry of rebellion and ruin. For those tossing in bed, haunted by modern worries, this tale offers a gentle reminder. Even in the darkest times, humanity finds a way to rise, to build, to endure. The palaces of Chang'an, with their bustling markets and silk-laden caravans, stand as proof that chaos is not eternal, that hope can take root in the most unlikely soil. The Han Dynasty's story is a balm for the sleepless, a narrative that unfolds like a quiet lullaby, rich with the promise of stability after turmoil. Imagine the Silk Road stretching across deserts, its paths alive with traders carrying ideas as precious as their goods. The Han era was not just a political triumph, but a cultural dawn, where philosophy, science, and art flourished under the steady hand of emperors who understood that survival meant more than conquest. It meant connection. The listener, perhaps weighed down by the pressures of deadlines or the hum of a restless mind, can find solace in this. The Han Dynasty's rise was a testament to human ingenuity, a story that resonates across centuries, offering a soft landing for those seeking both knowledge and peace. As the firelight of medieval hovels dims, the glow of Chang'an's lanterns takes its place, guiding the weary toward sleep. The medieval peasant and the Han emperor, though worlds apart, share a common truth. Survival is a craft, honed by necessity and polished by hope. In Europe, families huddled against the cold, their breath mingling in the dark. In China, a dynasty stitched together a fractured land, their vision lighting up the horizon. This narrative shift, from the personal struggle of a noble to the grand sweep of an empire, mirrors the listener's own journey from stress to rest. The Han Dynasty's story is not just history, it's a meditation on resilience, a reminder that even the most chaotic nights give way to dawn. For those lying awake, the tale of Chang'an's rise is a gentle nudge toward slumber, a whisper that the human spirit, whether in a hovel or a palace, always finds a way to endure, to dream, to rebuild. The dust of a crumbling empire settles over ancient China, where the Qin dynasty's iron grip has shattered, leaving a land scarred by rebellion and ambition. In the wake of Qin Shi Huang's death in 210 BCE, the once unified realm fractures into chaos, as if the very earth mourns its fallen tyrant. Fields lie soaked in blood, villages burn, and warlords carve out fiefdoms with swords sharper than their promises. Yet from this wreckage rises a story of resilience, a tale that whispers hope to the sleepless listener, tossing in the dark of a modern night. The Han Dynasty, born in 202 BCE, emerges not from the pomp of palaces, but from the grit of a peasant named Liu Bang, a man with no crown but a cunning mind. For those seeking solace in history's quiet corners, this chapter of boring history for sleep unfolds like a soothing balm, revealing how order can bloom from anarchy, how a single spark of human will can light an empire's dawn. Qin Shi Huang's reign, though brief, was a thunderstorm of control, stitching China together with roads, laws, and a brutal hand. His terracotta army stood guard over his legacy, But no clay soldier could stop the tide of rebellion that surged after his death. Peasants, crushed by taxes and forced labor, rose with pitchforks and fury, their shouts echoing across rice paddies and mountain passes. Nobles, sensing opportunity, turned on each other, their alliances as fleeting as the smoke from burning villages. The land was a chessboard, its pieces scattered, and the game seemed destined for endless stalemate. Yet, in this chaos, a figure emerged, not a warrior clad in armor, but a commoner with a farmer's weathered hands and a politician's sly grin. Liu Bang, a man of humble birth, carried no noble blood, only a knack for survival and a vision for something greater than conquest. Liu Bang's rise was no fairy tale, but a gritty saga of opportunism and endurance. Born in a village far from the glittering courts of Shenyang, he was a minor official, a nobody who dodged Qin's harsh laws and rallied men with little more than charisma and promises of a better tomorrow. His rival, Xiang Yu, was a warrior of legend, a towering figure who could cleave armies with his sword. Yet where Xiang Yu fought with brute force, Liu Bang played a subtler game, winning hearts before battles. He gathered rebels, peasants, and disgraced nobles, weaving their loyalties into a fragile but growing coalition. The listener, perhaps weighed down by the stress of a modern world, can find comfort in this. Liu Bang's story is not one of might, but of persistence, a reminder that even the humblest can reshape history when chaos cracks the door open. The shocking truth lies in the fragility of empires. Qin Shi Huang's iron-fisted dream collapsed in less than a decade, its laws too harsh, its people too broken. By 206 BCE, the Qin capital fell, and the land splintered into warring states, each lord claiming a piece of the shattered throne. Liu Bang, with no claim to nobility, fought not for glory but for survival, his battles a patchwork of ambushes, retreats, and clever deals. He lost more fights than he won, yet each defeat taught him something new: how to sway a rival, how to feed an army on scraps, how to turn desperation into defiance. The medieval peasant, shivering in a mud hovel, would have understood this. Survival is not about strength alone, but about adapting, enduring, and finding opportunity in the cracks of a broken world. The chaos of post-Qin China was a furnace, forging Liu Bang's unlikely rise. His victories were not always on the battlefield. They were in the quiet moments, sharing a bowl of millet with his men, promising land to the landless, listening to the grievances of a war-weary people. He was no scholar, no poet, but he knew the power of trust. By 202 BCE, after years of skirmishes and betrayals, Liu Bang faced Xiang Yu in a final stand at the Battle of Exile. Xiang Yu, the warrior king, stood tall, his army a storm of steel. Yet Liu Bang's cunning prevailed, his forces encircling Xiang Yu's, his promises of peace luring defectors. When Xiang Yu fell, taking his own life by the Wu River, Liu Bang stood alone, not as a conqueror, but as a unifier, ready to claim the title of Emperor Gaozu. This moment, the birth of the Han Dynasty, was a turning point, not just for China, but for the listener seeking solace in history's gentle rhythm. Liu Bang's triumph was not built on swords alone, but on the stubborn human will to rebuild, to find order in chaos. The medieval peasant, battling winter's wrath, shared this spirit, their small acts of survival mirroring Liu Bang's grand vision. The listener, perhaps wrestling with modern anxieties, can draw comfort from this. Chaos is not eternal. Liu Bang's empire rose from the ashes of rebellion, just as a sleepless night gives way to dawn. The Han Dynasty's story is a lullaby of resilience, its rise a testament to the power of ordinary people to shape extraordinary futures. Compare this to today, where we navigate our own chaos, endless notifications, fractured communities, the weight of a world that feels too big. The medieval peasant and Liu Bang's rebels would nod in understanding, their lives proof that survival is a craft, honed by necessity and hope. Liu Bang didn't need a crown to change history. He needed only the will to keep going, to see opportunity where others saw ruin. The listener, lying awake, can find peace in this, knowing that even in the darkest moments, there's a spark of possibility. The Han Dynasty's rise was not just a political victory, it was a human one, a reminder that order can emerge from disorder, that light can follow even the bloodiest of nights. The fields of China, once stained with war, began to heal under Liu Bang's rule, just as the listener's restless mind might find calm in this tale. The Han Dynasty's birth was no accident. It was the work of countless hands, peasants, soldiers, even the defeated, who chose to build rather than destroy. The medieval peasant, huddling by a feeble fire, knew this truth. Survival is a collective effort, a shared refusal to let chaos win. As the listener drifts towards sleep, the story of Liu Bang's rise offers a gentle anchor, a reminder that history is not just a record of kings and battles, but of human hearts refusing to break. The chaos of post-Qin China faded, and in its place rose a dynasty that would light the way for centuries, a beacon for those seeking rest in a restless world. The dust of war settles over ancient China, where the scars of rebellion still mar the fields, yet a new dawn breaks with the rise of Liu Bang, a peasant turned emperor who stitches a fractured land into the tapestry of the Han Dynasty. In the wake of the Qin Dynasty's collapse, the air is thick with the memory of blood and betrayal. But Liu Bang, crowned Emperor Gaozu in 202 BCE, brings a quieter ambition, not of conquest, but of healing. His reign is no glittering saga of heroes. It's a gritty tale of pragmatism, where a commoner's cunning lays the foundation for an empire that will shape China for centuries. For the sleepless listener, tossing under the weight of modern stress, this chapter of boring history. For sleep offers a soothing whisper of resilience, a story of rebuilding from ruin that calms the mind like a gentle lullaby. The Han Dynasty's early years are a testament to human endurance, a beacon for those seeking peace in history's steady rhythm. Liu Bang's empire was born not in the grandeur of palaces, but in the muddy fields where peasants toiled, their backs bent under the memory of Qin's tyranny. The Qin dynasty, with its iron laws and endless labor, had unified China but crushed its spirit, leaving a people weary of fear. Liu Bang, a man who once dodged tax collectors as a village nobody, understood this exhaustion. He didn't dream of terracotta armies or towering walls. He dreamed of fields green with crops, of villages free from the lash. His first act as emperor was to slash taxes, a move as bold as any battlefield victory, giving farmers a chance to breathe, to plant, to live. The listener, perhaps worn down by the grind of modern life, can find solace in this. Liu Bang's genius was not in wielding power, but in loosening its grip, proving that leadership can be as much about mercy as might. The shocking truth lies in Liu Bang's restraint. He didn't dismantle the Qin's legacy entirely, but reshaped it like a potter softening clay to mold something new. The Qin's roads, laws, and bureaucracy were tools of control, But Liu Bang saw their potential for unity. He kept the system of counties and commanderies, streamlining administration to bind a sprawling land without strangling it. Punishments, once brutal under Qin Shi Huang, were softened. Floggings replaced executions. Mercy tempered justice. This wasn't weakness, it was strategy, a recognition that fear builds empires, but trust sustains them. The medieval peasant, shivering in a hovel, would have understood this, their own survival hinging on shared effort rather than force. For the listener, Liu Bang's reforms offer a quiet lesson. Even in chaos, small acts of wisdom can light the way forward, a truth as soothing as it is profound. Liu Bang's greatest innovation was planting the seeds of meritocracy, a system that would blossom into China's famed imperial examinations centuries later. He sought advisors not from noble bloodlines, but from talent, inviting scholars and strategists to his court, regardless of birth. This was revolutionary, a peasant emperor elevating men like himself, proving that ability could outweigh ancestry. The listener, perhaps grappling with modern hierarchies, can draw comfort from this. Liu Bang's court was a place where ideas mattered more than titles, where a farmer's son could counsel a king. The Han Dynasty's early bureaucracy was no perfect meritocracy, but it was a start, a flicker of fairness in a world often ruled by privilege. The medieval peasant, toiling under a lord's whim, would have envied this, their lives bound by birth, their dreams buried in frost. The fields of China, once battlegrounds, began to heal under Liu Bang's policies. Farmers returned to their plows, their hands no longer clenched around weapons, but sowing seeds for harvests that fed a growing empire. Markets buzzed again, not with the clink of armor, but with the chatter of traders bartering grain, cloth, and hope. Liu Bang's reign was no golden age. Rebellions still simmered, and his own generals sometimes chafed under his rule, but it was a beginning, a foundation built on the understanding that an empire thrives when its people do. The listener, lying awake with the weight of deadlines or doubts, can find peace in this. Liu Bang's Han Dynasty was not a monument to one man, but to countless hands working together, a reminder that survival is a collective art, as true in ancient China as in a medieval hovel. The Han Dynasty's early years were a delicate dance, balancing the Qin's legacy with a new vision. Liu Bang didn't erase the past, he repurposed it, turning tools of oppression into instruments of stability. His advisors, men of wit rather than wealth, helped draft laws that encouraged farming, trade, and trust. The empire's borders were still raw, threatened by nomadic tribes and ambitious warlords, but Liu Bang's focus was inward, on the people who tilled the soil and filled the markets. This was his genius. He saw that an empire's strength lies not in its walls, but in its fields, not in its swords, but in its souls. The medieval peasant, banking embers to survive a winter night, would have nodded in recognition, their own lives a testament to the power of small, stubborn acts. For the listener, this is a gentle nudge toward sleep, a story of rebuilding that soothes the restless mind. Compare this to today, where we chase progress through innovation and ambition, often forgetting the human cost. Liu Bang's Han Dynasty reminds us that true progress is grounded in care for the land, for the people, for the fragile threads that bind a society. The listener, perhaps stressed by a world that demands constant hustle, can find comfort in this slower, steadier approach. The medieval peasant, fighting frost with fire, shared this wisdom, their survival a daily act of faith in tomorrow. Liu Bang's reforms were no overnight miracle, but a patient rebuilding, like tending a fire through a long night. The listener can drift toward sleep with this thought. History teaches us that chaos can be tamed, not with force, but with wisdom, a truth as calming as the hum of a distant market or the crackle of a peasant's hearth. The Han Dynasty's foundation was not just political, it was human, a story of resilience that resonates across centuries. Liu Bang, the peasant emperor, understood that an empire is only as strong as its weakest farmer, a lesson the medieval peasant lived every day, their lives a constant negotiation with scarcity. The listener, wrestling with modern anxieties, can find solace in this shared thread of endurance, a reminder that survival is not about grandeur, but about persistence. As the fields of China bloomed under Liu Bang's rule, so too did the hope of a people weary of war. The Han Dynasty's early years were a quiet triumph, a foundation laid not in stone, but in trust, a legacy that whispers to the sleepless. Even in the darkest times, a new dawn is possible if only you keep tending the fire. The Han Dynasty, now a sturdy sapling rooted in Liu Bang's pragmatic vision, blossoms into a mighty oak under the reign of Emperor Wu, or Han Wu-jie, from 141 to 87 BCE. His era is a vibrant tapestry woven with ambition, where the dusty trails of the Silk Road stretch like veins across the ancient world, pulsing with ideas, goods, and dreams. Chang'an, the imperial capital, hums with life, merchants haggling over silk, scholars debating Confucian texts, and envoys from distant lands marveling at a civilization that dares to rival the heavens. For the sleepless listener, restless under the weight of modern stress, this chapter of boring history for sleep unfolds like a soothing melody, a tale of expansion and wisdom that calms the mind with its grandeur. Han Wu-jie's reign is not just a story of conquest, but of connection, a reminder that even in the chaos of ambition, humanity can build bridges that endure, offering solace to those seeking peace in history's gentle embrace. Han Wu-jie ascends the throne as a young man, his eyes fixed not on the ruins of the past, but on the horizons of the future. The Han Dynasty, forged by Liu Bang's steady hand, is stable but not yet glorious. Wu, with the fire of youth and the weight of legacy, transforms it into an empire that commands awe. He doesn't merely rule, he reshapes, declaring Confucianism the guiding star of his realm, its principles of loyalty, duty, and order weaving into the fabric of Chinese culture. The listener, perhaps worn by the grind of daily life, can find comfort in this. Wu's ambition was not reckless, but calculated, a vision that turned a recovering nation into a beacon of civilization. His court buzzes with scholars, their brushes dancing on bamboo slips, crafting a philosophy that will echo through millennia, much like a medieval peasant's fire kept hope alive through the darkest winters. The shocking truth lies in the scale of Wu's ambition. He didn't just expand borders, he redrew the world's map. To the north, he wages relentless campaigns against the Xiongnu, nomadic tribes whose hoofbeats once shook the empire's edges. His armies, disciplined and vast, push back the raiders, securing frontiers with forts that stand like sentinels against the steppes' wild winds. To the west, he opens the Silk Road, a ribbon of trade that carries not just silk, but ideas, Buddhism from India, glass from Rome, spices from Persia. Chang'an becomes a crossroads, its markets a kaleidoscope of voices and colors, where a merchant's laugh mingles with the clink of coins. The medieval peasant, huddling in a freezing hovel, would have marveled at this, their own world bound by the village's edge. For the listener, Wu's vision offers a gentle escape, a reminder that ambition, when tempered with wisdom, can weave a world together. Wu's embrace of Confucianism is no mere decree, it's a revolution of the mind. He elevates scholars over warriors, their knowledge a new kind of power. The Confucian emphasis on harmony, respect, and duty reshapes the empire's soul, guiding everything from court rituals to village life. Schools spring up, training officials in the classics, their lessons etching order into a land once torn by chaos. Yet Wu's reign is not without shadows. His campaigns drain the treasury, his taxes weigh heavy on farmers, and his ambition sometimes outpaces his resources. The listener, perhaps familiar with the strain of overreaching goals, can find solace in this. Even great rulers falter, but Wu's legacy endures not in perfection, but in progress. The medieval peasant, banking embers to survive, would understand this balance. Greatness born from struggle, not ease. The Silk Road under Wu's patronage is a marvel of human connection, its paths winding through deserts and mountains, carrying more than goods. Ideas flow like rivers, philosophies, technologies, stories of distant lands. Envoys bring tales of Rome's stone cities, while Buddhist monks introduce sutras that speak of peace beyond the material world. The listener, lying awake with modern worries, can drift into this image. A caravan trudging under starlit skies, its camels laden with silk that will drape a Roman senator's shoulders. This is no mere trade route. It's a lifeline, stitching civilizations together, much like a peasant's shared fire stitched a village through winter. Wu's vision made China not just an empire, but a crossroads of humanity, a legacy that whispers to the restless. Connection outlasts chaos, a truth as calming as a desert night. The Han Dynasty's expansion under Wu is not just territorial, it's cultural, intellectual, a flowering of the human spirit. Military outposts rise in the west, guarding trade routes, while scholars in Changzan map the stars, their observations sharpening the empire's calendar. Farmers benefit from these celestial charts, knowing when to sow and reap, their fields a mirror of the heavens' order. Wu's court fosters inventions, improved plows, water mills, that ease the burden on those who feed the empire. Yet the cost is heavy. Soldiers die in distant battles, peasants grumble under taxes, and Wu himself, aging, grows restless, haunted by the fragility of his achievements. The listener, perhaps wrestling with their own ambitions, can find peace in this. Wu's reign was not flawless, but it was enduring, a lesson in building something lasting, even when the cost is steep. The medieval peasant, fighting frost with straw and stories, would have seen kinship in Wu's struggle to balance ambition with stability. Their small acts of survival, patching a wall, sharing a crust, mirror the Han's grand efforts to unify a fractured land. Both understood that resilience is not about avoiding hardship, but about facing it with purpose. The listener, stressed by modern demands, can draw comfort from this parallel. The Han Dynasty's strength lay not in its armies, but in its people, their will to build, to connect, to endure. Wu's reign, with its triumphs and flaws, is a lullaby for the sleepless, its rhythm a reminder that greatness is forged in the crucible of effort, that even the grandest empires start with a single step, a single dream. Compare this to today, where we chase progress through innovation, often at the cost of connection. The Silk Road's caravans would baffle our digital age, yet they carried something we've lost, a tangible sense of shared humanity. The medieval peasant, warming their hands by a feeble fire, knew the value of a neighbor's warmth. Wu's empire knew the value of a world brought closer by trade and ideas. The listener, battling the isolation of modern life, can find solace in this. History teaches us that connection is the root of survival, whether in a hovel or a palace. As Wu's armies marched and his scholars wrote, they built not just an empire, but a legacy of resilience, a story that soothes the restless mind with its promise. Even in the darkest nights, humanity finds a way to shine, to endure, to dream of a brighter dawn. The Han Dynasty, under the ambitious sweep of Emperor Wu, emerges not merely as an empire of borders, but as a crucible of culture, where ideas take root and bloom like lotus flowers in a tranquil pond. Changzan, the beating heart of this ancient realm, thrums with the chatter of scholars, the scratch of brushes on bamboo slips, and the soft clink of star charts being adjusted under lantern light. From 141 to 87 BCE, the Han transforms into a beacon of human ingenuity, crafting a legacy that will define Chinese civilization for millennia. For the sleepless listener, burdened by the weight of modern stress, this chapter of boring history for sleep unfolds like a gentle lullaby, weaving tales of paper's invention, starlit calendars, and Confucian ideals that soothe the restless mind. The Han's cultural flowering is a testament to resilience, a whisper of hope that even in turbulent times, humanity can create beauty, offering solace to those seeking peace in history's quiet corners. The Han Dynasty's cultural achievements are no accident. They are the fruit of a society that values knowledge as much as conquest. Under Emperor Wu, Confucianism rises from a philosophy to a way of life, its principles of loyalty, filial piety, and social harmony etched into the empire's soul. Scholars, once mere advisors, become the backbone of governance, their studies shaping laws, rituals, and even the rhythm of daily life. The listener, perhaps worn by the chaos of modern schedules, can find comfort in this. The Han's embrace of order was not rigid, but nurturing, a framework that gave meaning to a land recovering from war. In medieval Europe, peasants huddled by feeble fires, their stories a shield against despair. In Han China, scholars lit the darkness with ideas, their words a fire that warmed the mind rather than the body. The invention of paper, a quiet revolution, marks one of the Han's most enduring gifts. Around the 2nd century BCE, artisans in Chang'an discover a way to pulp plant fibers into thin, durable sheets, transforming how knowledge is shared. Bamboo and silk, once the domain of scribes, give way to this new medium, cheaper and lighter, allowing ideas to spread like ripples across a still lake. Books multiply, libraries grow, and the thoughts of sages reach beyond the palace walls. The listener, perhaps staring at a glowing screen in the dead of night, can marvel at this. While medieval peasants scratched prayers into the dark, the Han were weaving a web of knowledge, their paper a canvas for dreams that would outlast empires. This invention, so simple yet profound, is a reminder that even small innovations can change the world, a soothing thought for those wrestling with modern anxieties. Astronomy, too, flourishes under the Han as scholars turn their eyes to the heavens, mapping stars with a precision that rivals the West's later achievements. They craft calendars that align planting seasons with celestial rhythms, guiding farmers to sow and reap under the right constellations. Eclipses, once omens of doom, are predicted with startling accuracy, a triumph of reason over fear. The listener, perhaps fretting over deadlines, can find peace in this. The Han's stargazers didn't conquer the sky. They learned its language, turning chaos into order. In medieval Europe, peasants prayed to saints to survive winter's wrath. In Han China, astronomers offered farmers a map of time, a tool as vital as fire. This blend of science and practicality is a lullaby for the sleepless, a reminder that knowledge can be a light in even the darkest nights. The shocking truth lies in the Han's cultural depth. While Europe's peasants battled frost with straw and grit, the Han were building a civilization that celebrated the mind as much as the sword. Confucian schools sprang up, teaching not just elites, but commoners, spreading values of duty and respect that shaped family life, governance, and even the way neighbors shared a bowl of rice. The Han's legal system, tempered by Confucian ideals, softened the Qin's brutal punishments, favoring fines over floggings, dialogue over decrees. Yet this was no utopia. Taxes still bit, and Emperor Wu's ambitions sometimes strained the empire's seams. The listener, perhaps familiar with the flaws of modern systems, can draw comfort from this. The Han's greatness was not in perfection, but in striving, a parallel to the peasant's stubborn fight against winter's cold. The Han's legacy is not just in its laws or inventions, but in its name, etched into the very identity of a people. The term Han Chinese emerges from this era, a badge of cultural unity that endures in modern China's language and pride. While medieval peasants wove stories to survive the night, the Han wove a culture that bound millions, from farmers to philosophers, under a shared vision. The listener, restless in a world of fleeting trends, can find solace in this permanence. The Han's ideas, like their paper, were built to last, their values a foundation that weathered centuries of change. The markets of Chang'an, filled with silk and spices, were not just hubs of trade, but of stories, where a merchant's tale of distant lands was as valuable as his wares, much like a peasant's fireside yarn. The Han's scientific advances, improved plows, water mills, seismic detectors, reflect a society that saw survival as a partnership with nature. Farmers, guided by star charts, tilled fields with tools that eased their burden, while scholars recorded histories that preserved the past for the future. This harmony of mind and earth is a stark contrast to medieval Europe, where survival was a daily wrestle with frost and hunger. The listener, perhaps stressed by a world that feels out of balance, can find peace in this. The Han's innovations were not about domination, but about understanding, a lesson as relevant now as it was then. The peasant's fire, kept alive through ingenuity, finds an echo in the Han's tools, each a spark of human will against the dark. The Han dynasty's cultural flowering was not without cost. Emperor Wu's campaigns and grand projects drained the treasury, and his later years were shadowed by doubts about his legacy. Yet, his reign left a mark that time could not erase, a civilization that thrived on ideas as much as the armies. The listener, battling modern pressures, can draw comfort from this. Even flawed rulers can build something lasting, just as peasants endured winter with nothing but straw and hope. The Han's legacy is a lullaby of resilience, its rhythm soothing the sleepless with a truth. Greatness is not in avoiding struggle, but in what you create despite it. While Europe's peasants huddled for warmth, The Han built a world where knowledge was warmth, a fire that burned brighter than any hearth. Compare this to today, where we chase progress through technology, often losing sight of connection and meaning. The Han's paper and star charts were tools of unity, not division, linking people across generations and borders. The medieval peasant, sharing a crust by a feeble fire, knew the value of community. The Han scholar, writing under lantern light, knew the value of ideas that endure. The listener, lying awake with the hum of modern life, can find solace in this shared thread. Survival is not just about enduring, but about creating, whether it's a fire in a hovel or a philosophy in a palace. As the Han's legacy whispers through the ages, it offers a gentle nudge toward sleep, a reminder that even in the darkest nights, humanity's light, its culture, its knowledge, shines on, guiding us toward dawn. The Han Dynasty's lanterns flicker in Chang'an's bustling streets, their glow a testament to a civilization that rose from chaos, while far across the world, a medieval peasant's hearth sputters in a hovel, its frail light a defiance against winter's bite. These two worlds, separated by continents and centuries, are bound by a single thread, the stubborn human will to endure, to find hope in the darkest nights. In this final chapter of Boring History for Sleep, the stories of a fallen noble in medieval Europe and the Han emperors in ancient China converge, offering a soothing lullaby for the sleepless listener, weary from the day's stress. This is not just history, it's a meditation on resilience, a whisper that even in the coldest, most chaotic times, humanity clings to sparks of light, crafting survival from struggle. For those tossing in bed, seeking peace, these tales are a gentle nudge toward slumber, a reminder that the past holds lessons as comforting as a warm blanket. In medieval Europe, the peasant's life was a daily wrestle with frost and hunger, their hovels a battlefield where survival was won with straw, fire, and shared warmth. The noble, stripped of title and wealth, learned this truth in a mud-caked shack where the cold was not just a physical foe, but a thief of hope, whispering doubts that echoed the medieval term melancholy. Yet in their cramped, smelly hovels, peasants found strength in community, their stories and songs a shield against despair. They banked embers, patched walls, and shared meager meals, each act a quiet rebellion against winter's cruelty. The listener, perhaps burdened by modern anxieties, can find solace in this. The peasant's grit was not born of grandeur, but of necessity, a lesson in finding meaning in the smallest victories, like a fire that holds through the night. Across the world, the Han Dynasty's rise was a grander saga, yet no less human. Liu Bang, a peasant turned emperor, built an empire from the ashes of Qin's tyranny. His reforms, a lifeline for a war-weary people. Under Han Wu-jie, the Han bloomed into a cultural beacon, its Silk Road carrying ideas as far as Rome, its scholars mapping stars and crafting paper that would preserve knowledge for millennia. Chang'an's markets buzzed with life, a stark contrast to the medieval hovel's silence, yet both shared a common pulse, the drive to create order from chaos. The listener, restless in a world of endless notifications, can draw comfort from this. The Han's legacy was not built on perfection, but on persistence, a reminder that even fractured times can yield lasting light. The shocking truth lies in the parallels between these worlds. Whether in a freezing hovel or a bustling capital, survival is a craft, honed by human connection and ingenuity. The medieval peasant, huddling with family and livestock, knew that loneliness was a colder killer than frost. Their shared breath and stories were as vital as the fire. The Han emperors, from Liu Bang's pragmatic reforms to Wu's ambitious Silk Road, understood that an empire thrives not on swords, but on trust, on the collective will of a people. The listener, perhaps isolated by modern life's demands, can find peace in this shared wisdom. Survival is not solitary. The peasant's fire and the Han's philosophies were both fueled by community, a truth that soothes the mind like a gentle hum in the dark. The medieval peasant's hovel, with its straw-strewn floor and dung-smeared walls, was a crucible of resilience, where every morning was a victory over winter's wrath. They didn't have therapists or self-help guides, but they had each other, their voices weaving tales of spring to drown out the wind's howl. In Chang'an, scholars and emperors built a different kind of fire, one of ideas and culture, their Confucian ideals and star charts guiding a nation toward stability. Both worlds, though vastly different, taught the same lesson. Hope is not a gift, but a choice, a spark you nurture through struggle. The listener, battling the weight of a stressful day, can find calm in this. Whether in a hovel or a palace, humanity endures by choosing to fight, to connect, to dream of a better dawn. The Han Dynasty's legacy is etched in the very name of China's majority, Han Chinese, a cultural identity that endures through centuries, much like the peasant's fire endured the longest winters. The Silk Road, with its caravans of silk and stories, linked distant worlds, while the peasant's shared crust linked neighbors in a freezing village. Both were acts of defiance, proof that humanity thrives not in isolation, but in unity. The listener, perhaps staring at a ceiling in the dead of night, can find solace in this. History is not just a record of kings and battles, but of ordinary people, peasants, scholars, emperors, who refused to let chaos win. Their stories are a lullaby, a reminder that even the darkest nights give way to morning, that even the heaviest burdens can be shared. Compare this to today, where we navigate our own chaos, endless emails, fractured communities, the hum of a world that never sleeps. The medieval peasant, warming their hands by a feeble fire, and the Han scholar, writing under lantern light, would understand our restlessness. Their lives were a testament to resilience, to finding light in the dark, whether through a neighbor's warmth or a philosophy that bound a nation. The listener, stressed by modern demands, can draw peace from this. Survival is not about avoiding struggle, but about what you build despite it. The peasant's hovel and Chang'an's palaces were both forged from human will, their legacies a soft whisper to the sleepless. You are not alone, and the dawn is closer than it seems. As the Han Dynasty's star charts guided farmers and the peasant's fire warmed shivering hands, both worlds remind us that survival is a collective art. The listener, weary from the day, can sink into this truth. History is a tapestry of human endurance, its threads woven from small acts of courage. The medieval peasant, sharing a story by the hearth, and the Han emperor, opening the Silk Road, were both builders of hope, their efforts a bridge across time. The night may be long, but these stories are a gentle embrace, soothing the restless mind with their rhythm. As the listener drifts toward sleep, the echoes of hovels and palaces linger, a reminder that humanity's greatest triumph is not in avoiding the dark, but in lighting a spark that carries through it, guiding us all toward a brighter, quieter dawn. The embers of medieval hovels fade, their warmth a whisper of survival, while Chang'an's lanterns dim, leaving echoes of an empire's dreams. From frostbitten nights to silk-strewn roads, we've wandered through history's quiet tales, where resilience bloomed in the darkest hours. Let your shoulders soften, dear listener, and your breath slow, as these stories cradle you towards sleep. If your eyes still linger on the stars, share a thought. What stirred your heart tonight? The peasant's fire or the Han's wisdom? Close your eyes, let the night's gentle hum carry you, and dream of spring's promise. Tomorrow another tale awaits, a soft thread of history to weave you into slumber. For now, rest, wrapped in the glow of human grit, and let the past's whispers guide you to a peaceful dawn.